Hello, I'm Jack Grady, and on behalf of the Archives and the History Committee of the First Baptist Church on the Square in LaGrange, Georgia, we welcome veteran Elmer Hanners, and we thank him for his service to our country and also to our church. Elmer, we appreciate so much your participation in this project.
Thank you, Jack.
Our Archives and History Committee, I know, will be pleased. You have had a fascinating career in the Navy, and we want to talk a little bit about that. Most of the people who are participating in this Veterans Project for our church were short-timers in a way, like 4 years. It was a long tenure for most of us, especially people like me who went in late in World War II and did not make a career of the Navy, but came out and went on with life, so to speak. But you've spent 32 years in the Navy in a variety of areas of service, and we want to know more about that, and we'd like to record that and have it available for use in our archives area, in our church library. They will also have a copy made for use down at the museum here, the museum on Main Street. People who come in there, it's like checking out a book, I guess you could say. And but we'll also have a copy for you at the completion of this taping. But thank you so much for coming. Tell us a little bit about your enlistment process and how you got started.
Well, Jack, I volunteered to go in the Navy just as I turned 17.
17?
With my parents' permission.
Had to have them sign off on that?
Yes, they had to sign.
If it was before age 18?
Right.
Yeah, okay.
So with their permission, I joined the Navy and had a long and rewarding 32 years from 1955 until June of 1987.
Wow. 22
years of that was as an enlisted service, and the last 10 years as a commissioned officer.
You did it all. You did it all. Well, we'd like to know more about some of those experiences. You started out, of course, as you said, an enlisted man at age 17, and they sent you to boot camp somewhere. Where was that?
I went to basic training in San Diego, California. It was 9 weeks long, and you reported as a civilian, and after a short 9 weeks, you were transformed into another person, basically.
Another person. You say a short 9 weeks. I guess at some point you thought it was long.
Sometimes it seemed like it was forever. Yeah. But I have a book called The Anchor that was presented to each company participant in boot camp, and I'd like to show 2 pictures, one before and one after.
Before and after. Okay, let's see the before and after. Now, this is when you first signed up as a 17-year-old.
The before picture is people reporting to recruit training in San Diego, California.
Just off the bus.
Just off the bus, and everything you see there except your body and your wallet got shipped back home as soon as you were issued a new uniform. Well, after 9 weeks of training,
9 weeks.
9 weeks, you would leave there almost as a brand new person.
Oh, how about that? Look at that.
To face your future, either in the Navy or shortly thereafter back in civilian life.
Got your duffel bag on your shoulder, ready to face the world.
Right.
Yeah, all right. Man, how about that? That's quite a neat way to document all of your experiences in the early part of your career. That's wonderful. Thank you. Well, then tell us just a little bit about your basic training experiences.
Well, the 3 things I remember vividly, besides all the marching and rifle drills and chow hall food, we called it,
yeah.
Was some of the training we had to go through, like jumping off of a 15-foot tower into a pool and swimming 50 feet underwater.
Underwater all the way.
That was very scary for me because I was not a real good swimmer and I didn't like the heights either. And then going through a gas chamber exercise where you had a mask on, you go into this chamber, they release tear gas.
Tear
and
gas?
Not knowing ahead of time, you had to take that mask off and stay in that room until somebody says it's okay to leave.
Wow.
That was kind of frightening. And then fighting a fire in a closed compartment.
What was the purpose of your doing that?
Well, later on I realized that when you're at sea on board a ship, if you have a fire, you have to have that fire under control within 2 minutes, otherwise it becomes a major problem.
2 minutes, I see, okay.
So all sailors go through firefighting exercises.
Okay, that's one that I don't recall doing, but go ahead, excuse me.
Oh, that was it for basic training.
Yeah.
Then from there I embarked on a one-year training course to become an aircraft electrician.
Aircraft electrician, so you went through a school, a special Navy school
Right.
for that. Okay, and where was that conducted?
Well, first went to Norman, Oklahoma, which is a short distance from Oklahoma City, for a couple of months of airman preparatory training. That was an indoctrination into the aviation environment. And then from there to Jacksonville, Florida for Class A school, we called it, for 22 weeks of training to be an aircraft electrician. And then from there I went to my first duty station down in South Texas for about a year, and then on to California to my first fighter squadron assignment.
Fighter
Squadron.
Fighter squadron assignment. You were part of a fighter squadron.
Fighter squadron, yes.
I see, okay. And what kind of, were you actually assigned to a ship at that point?
Well, every squadron was part of an air group, and the air group as a whole would be assigned to a specific carrier for deployment purposes.
An aircraft carrier was the primary, I guess, vessel that was a part of that, but then there were other ships, smaller ships.
Yeah, the aircraft carrier was just the center of a large task force. It had a lot of smaller ships that stood guard for the aircraft carrier when the airplanes weren't flying. And then other ships as part of the task force served other purposes, like cruisers and battleships would be part of the task force along with the aircraft carrier.
I see. And at that point, you were in aviation electronics?
Aviation electricians, maybe.
Aviation electrician. And tell us a little bit about your duties.
Well, started out maintaining aircraft electrical and instrument systems on fighter aircraft. Started early on with the F-2H model fighter and moved on to the F-3H fighter and then into the F-4 Phantom community.
Was the Phantom, was that a new plane at that time?
The F-4 Phantom was a brand new all-weather fighter interceptor aircraft introduced in the 60s.
Okay, 1960s. Okay, fine.
Following duties in the aircraft maintenance sections, I went on to teach aircraft maintenance of instruments and electrical systems to Navy and Marine Corps personnel, and had the privilege of teaching the British Royal Air Force and Navy personnel
Did you?
how to maintain the F-4 Phantom fighter jet.
That's interesting. So that was I bet you enjoyed that experience, getting acquainted with those folks, and dealing with them in the work that you were doing.
That was quite a unique experience because all of their enlisted personnel were the equivalent of electrical engineers.
Really?
And probably knew more than I knew.
Oh.
So I learned a lot from them.
Well, it worked both ways, though, I'm sure. I'm sure it did.
Then after getting a commission as a chief warrant officer, I was in the aircraft maintenance management category.
The chief warrant officer is a very significant rating, rank. So how long had you been in the Navy by the time you achieved that?
I was enlisted for 22 years and rose from seaman recruit to Master Chief Petty Officer.
Okay, the chief petty officer, of course, too, is a very significant rating and rank. But you went on from there to the warrant officer position.
With 22 years in, I had the option of retiring or applying for an officer program. So I applied for the warrant officer program and got selected, and was very happy with that and decided to make another career.
Sure, and I don't blame you.
So I stayed another 10 years
I
as a commissioned
recall
officer.
in a bull session somewhere in my brief naval experience, a conversation with a group, and one of the people in that group made a reference to the rank, the rating, chief warrant officer of whatever particular area of responsibility. But a chief warrant officer, I'll never forget, he said that's the best job in the Navy and the best and the most significant. You can explain that better than
Well,
I.
I can agree with that because you know what the enlisted community is like. You've been there, and then
Went
you
all the way
become
through that, yeah.
went all the way through that. Then you become a commissioned officer, and you learn the other side of that fence.
Okay.
So you get to look at the best parts of both worlds.
Okay, hey, that's a
And
good
it's
way
a
to
very
put it.
enjoyable position to be in.
Chief warrant officer. Good, good. I thank you for sharing that. But you didn't stop there. So go ahead with progression of your career.
Well, after being in the maintenance activity for a while, I was tapped to go administer a military police department.
Military police
That was
department.
on short notice, and that was not my training background, but there was a need for an administrator for the department, so it was an 80-member police force on a major naval air station, and it was probably the most enjoyable, rewarding tour of duty in my whole career.
Oh, great. And they would not have tapped you for that had they not had great confidence in your ability. They had observed that throughout your career, I'm sure, and of course looking at reports too that had come through. So I commend you for that. Thank you.
Well, I had the good fortune to be assigned duties that were not along my technical career path. So I was very fortunate in that respect.
Yeah, good, good, good.
And then my last tour of duty, I served as a personnel manager at the Navy Military Personnel Command in Washington, D.C.
Did you really? Personnel director in Washington, D.C. of a special area of work.
The special area was a group of officers with my specialty. I would be responsible for looking out for their career path.
Oh, okay.
And sort of like a headhunter job. We had jobs available, and my job was to match the individual and their qualifications with the next job assignment that would enhance their career advancement.
Gotcha. Okay, good. And the difference in being a headhunter in the Navy and a headhunter outside was that you knew your people and you had all of these records that you could
Right.
refer to determine their strengths and their abilities, so forth.
Had to consider their reputation. We'd get a lot of requests for certain individuals to go here or there, and sometimes it was a good match, and other times it might not be. So you had to put the needs of the Navy as top priority,
Yes.
and then the individual desires after that,
Good.
and try to
Good.
match those
Yeah,
up.
makes a lot of sense, and that's something that you, I'm sure, were impressed by, and you look back on it with pride, the accomplishments that were made. Let me ask you, what would you say? I know you've got so many, but can you think of one particular memorable experience you could share with us?
Well, there are a lot of those.
You
but,
can't share them all, I guess. We'd be here all day.
Just to mention a few, I'd say participating in 4 combat tours aboard aircraft carriers during the Vietnam War.
4 combat tours.
4 different tours.
Okay.
And 3 different ships, 3 different aircraft carriers. Just working in the environment, the flight deck environment. Mm-hmm. It's a unique place to be, unique experience. There are many other unique experiences in the world, but not many can match the thrill of working on the flight deck during combat operations when planes are launching and landing, and all you can do is have your head on a swivel so you'll see what's going on because you cannot hear.
Oh, okay, so much noise.
With several dozen jet engines running at one time,
Yes.
it's difficult to hear anything other than jet noise, so you have to be aware of where you are, what you're doing, and look around and make sure you're being safe all the time.
Did you wear some kind of ear protector?
Yes, all the flight deck crew had to wear an inflatable life vest
Oh, yeah. Okay.
and a helmet. We called it a cranial helmet. It was just a cloth helmet with a couple of hard pieces here to protect your head. Mm-hmm. And in case you got blown down or over the side, you could inflate that life vest and wait for rescue.
And that did happen, I guess, on occasion, not with you maybe, but with some others.
That would happen occasionally during every deployment. During flight operations, somebody would get caught in a jet exhaust as the plane was taxiing or starting to taxi and get blown right over the side.
Oh, my.
And that's about a 70-foot drop from there to the water.
You wouldn't call that a high dive either, would you? Unwilling.
But we were comfortable in knowing there was a rescue helicopter always airborne whenever there were flight operations going on. So if you did happen to wind up in that situation, they would be right there to pick you up.
Okay, yeah, good. Now, this is during the Vietnam War.
Yes.
Right? And you were off the coast of Vietnam?
Yes.
When you were fulfilling your responsibility?
Right.
Okay, and you had planes taking off, planes coming back, of course, and wow, what a challenging experience that must have been. And
well, I must say it was probably a lot safer working on the flight deck compared to the pilots and the air crews that had to fly all the missions during the war.
And some were shot down.
Some of them were shot down, yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and that went on for about what period of time?
Well, my first experience with actual combat began in 1963 off the coast of Vietnam on an aircraft carrier, and some missions were flown from there in country. But at the height of the war, from the beginning of 1970 until March of 73, I spent most of my time on aircraft carriers off the coast of Vietnam.
3 years. That war continued until about 75, didn't it? I think.
We pulled out of Vietnam in, I think it was February 1973.
Okay. You're talking about your unit, your flight unit?
The U.S.
The
U.S. commitment to that war ended in February 73.
Yeah, okay. 73. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. It's very unusual experience to be a part of, and I'm sure you can look back on it with misgivings about some things, but pride also in the accomplishments that not only you but your crew made during that period of time.
Well, there were some times that the public acceptance of the military was not the best that we had experienced, but we always try to remember the good times.
Yeah, sure. Now, after you came back to the States, I presume you did, where were you assigned?
I was still in Southern California, and stayed there until I moved to Washington, D.C. for my last tour of duty before retirement.
Okay. What were you doing there in Washington?
That was when I was personnel manager,
Okay.
assigning officers to their next
Oh, yes.
tour
right.
of duty.
Right. Okay. I guess when you were telling me that, I was picturing it. You were somewhere deployed somewhere else, but you were in Washington at that time. Okay.
Let me go back to aircraft carriers
Yeah,
just
sure,
a second.
Sure.
I have this book. It's called Cruise Book. And every deployment you make, the ship's crew generates a cruise book. It's sort of like an annual or
Yeah.
a yearbook from school.
Yes.
But it's a pictorial essay
Wow.
of everything that went on from the time you left your home port until you returned.
And you could tell by just looking at it that that represents several years.
And this is from the USS Midway, and the date was 1972.
Oh, the Midway, USS Midway.
Yes.
And you
the
were
USS Midway is now a museum in San Diego, California.
Oh, yeah. I think I read that somewhere. I had forgotten the Midway. Okay. Well, let's look at it for a moment.
Okay.
Open
Well,
it.
it just chronicles the departure from the States. It shows a picture of every unit deployed with the ship and every division on the ship, the head of that division or department, pictures of the crew,
All the personnel there.
and then you'll have photos of places you visited.
Yeah.
And let's see, this is one, Christmas with Bob Hope.
How about
In
that?
Christmas of 1972, our ship visited Singapore, and since they don't observe Christmas the same as we do, the ship had to leave port, but while we were out to sea for 3 days for Christmas, Bob Hope and his troop came aboard and put on a USO show for us,
How about that?
which was fantastic.
Oh, I'll bet. And it was all done on your ship?
All done
ship.
on the deck of the aircraft
Well,
carrier.
why did you have to leave Singapore during Christmas?
We were going to celebrate Christmas, and they have a different religious bent there and don't celebrate Christmas the same way
Yeah.
we do. So it was politically correct, I guess, for us to go to sea for a few days.
Well, I never would have thought of that. Well, you have something else, some other document I think I saw.
Well, there's
Tell us about that.
a fairly new website online called Together We Served. And there's a section for each branch of the armed forces, and you can join up free and do your own profile, military profile, and look for people you served with.
Oh, I see.
And you can list the unit you were assigned to, and if other people have joined the site and served in the same unit, you will get a notification via email about that person, and you can communicate with them.
Isn't that great?
And there's an opportunity to print out a summary of your military career. Showing your
man,
dates
that
of
is
service,
neat.
all your assignments, the unit badges you were assigned to.
Beautiful. And that's you.
Special awards. That's me many years ago.
Yeah. And then this is your rank and ratings. And
That represents my rank.
The little blue or
The little
purple.
bar at the top and the gold stripe at the bottom is the sleeve of Chief Warrant Officer.
Chief Warrant Officer.
And the hash marks, the gold marks in the middle,
1,
slanted
2,
there,
3, 4, 5.
are for enlisted service, and you can earn one of those for each 4 years of good conduct.
5 to 4 is 20. That's 20 years right there.
20 years of good conduct.
Good conduct. All right. And these are special badges.
Yes,
and-
different badges that I earned or awarded during my career.
And these are the
These are personal
Bars.
awards
bars that can
and
go on
unit
the uniform.
awards. Yes.
Wow. That is fantastic. And that represents your whole career, 32 years of service.
A summary
And-
of 32
and
years.
Here's a list of them, I believe. Yeah, beginning with the schools that you attended, so on, and then assignments that you had throughout your 32 years. all of them, right there.
Yes.
That is a great piece of
So anyone else that has been
memorabilia.
assigned to those units that log on will be notified that you were there, and it's called You Were There Too.
You were there too. Wonderful. Now, that website again was
TogetherWeServed.com.
TogetherWeServe.com.
Right.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there are a lot of veterans that are not aware of that, and they should be. I'd like to pursue that myself, see what find out about it. Together We Served.
TogetherWeServed.com.
Served. Or
Served.
ED.
ED.
Okay, good. Thank you. Well, one other thing. Let me ask you, Elmer, how do you feel about your experience in the Navy during all of these 32 years? How would you say that this is kind of a crazy question, I guess. How did it prepare you for the rest of your life?
Well, I think very well. The physical routine you had to maintain while in service helps prepare you for good health later on, for one thing. But just working with a team of people during a combat situation teaches you how to trust other people.
How to trust other people. That's important, isn't it? Significant.
You learn right away who you can trust the most.
Yeah.
Teaching other people how to maintain aircraft was a valuable experience because it taught me about myself and habits I had that might irritate other people. Standing in front of a room, talking, you had to be aware of little things you might do unconsciously that would irritate people and distract them. So that was a learning experience for myself. All through my career, I was involved in guiding men and women in career development.
Career development. Good.
Helping them decide what courses they should take for the next promotion, what kind of work assignment they should look for or ask for, and just interacting diplomatically with seamen to admirals.
Seamen to admirals, the whole gamut.
The whole gamut.
Yes. Yeah. Wonderful. That's a good statement. I like that. Well, and it did prepare you for your continuing work in your
yes,
life.
And another
after
valuable thing that I took advantage of was the educational opportunity while on active duty. I joined the Navy before I finished high school, but went on to finish high school, and one of the highlights of my career was earning a Bachelor of Science degree from Southern Illinois University.
Oh, really? How about that? So you got a college degree along with your high school diploma?
Yes.
Even after you went into service?
After joining the...
Yes. Yeah. Great. You made the most of that time there, and then you could apply that after service was over?
Yes.
Into your life?
That opened a lot of opportunities for work after retirement.
Yeah. Well, let me thank you again for your willingness to share all of this with us. We could talk about your Navy experience for half a day, I'm sure.
I could stay here for a half a day.
But I told you that we're going to have copies of this interview made, and you'll be getting one for you and your family to keep. But there will also be copies in the church library and in the archives room, the heritage room we call it, and one downtown in the museum on Main. We thank Paul Barnes for actually doing the recording of this interview, and I know that he gets rather involved himself as we talk about military experiences. When we were doing the World War II interviews, he went out after talking with one of those guys in the Army. He went out and bought an M1 rifle, some kind of a special like World War II issue that he wanted, and he's done that. But anyway, Paul has been great to help us with these, and I know that he's going to enjoy putting this one together. Elmer, thank you so much. best wishes to you.
Thank you, Jack, and thank you and your committee for recognizing all the men and women that have served our country and are serving our church.
Well, thank you for saying that, and there have been a lot of them. We've identified a lot of people from over the years who are veterans and members of our church, and we're pleased to begin to put all that together now and make it available to. I just wish we'd started earlier. That's the only regret I have. We should have started earlier, because many of our World War II group, particularly, are no longer with us. Yeah. But I think we've lost 4 Korean War veterans also. And of course, you guys who were in the Vietnam era, you're youngsters, so
Still young.
You'll be, yeah, thank you. Well, best wishes to you.
Thank you, Jack.
Elmer Hanners.